Hi everyone, this is Mindy and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I have some inspiration using some new products from Pretty Pink Posh. I'm going to be using this adorable mini watermelon stamp set. So I'm going to be coloring them with an alcohol marker, and the first thing I'm going to do is stamp out the images that I want. Now I am going to also stamp them on another piece of cardstock so I can have multiple images to help build up the scene. And this cardstock is the Hamemermill Cardstock. The ink that I'm going to be using to stamp it down is using an intense black ink from Honeybee Stamps. I like using this ink because I know it is safe for alcohol markers. Since this is a brand new stamp, I am going to ink it up again and stamp it down to make sure all of my lines are nice and crisp. Now this is a chart that I created with all of my Olo markers that I have, and I use that to help pick out the colors that I want to use for my image. I'm going to color my images using a 3-marker color combination, which I will have all of those listed over on my blog. Now, one of the biggest tips that I really want to give you with these Olo markers is that if you're going to be going between colors on the one image, for instance, here my 3 pinks, do not cap your markers. When you constantly pop your caps on and off, it's kind of doing a suction type of thing with the ink. And what's going to happen is you are going to end up kind of burping your ink onto your image, and it's going to ruin your image. Trust me, I know this. It has happened. I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but the more I kept taking my cap on and off, it just kind of built up that ink, and then my ink kind of squirted out. It just got oversaturated on my tip, and I ended up ruining one of my images. So it's one of the biggest tips I want to give you right now if you are looking at the Olo markers. I finished up the main piece of the watermelon and I'm working on the greens. Now, some of these colors of green that I'm using have a huge difference between them. You can see that this one is a really bright green. I mainly use that for the body of the watermelon and then also as a highlight to the kind of edges of the watermelon on the slices and also for my leaves. So there is quite a bit of a difference. I'm okay with that because I really like that high contrast. If you are still on the fence about if you want to invest in Olo markers or not, what I suggest is just buying a couple at a time. For instance, if you like this pink color combination, just grab these pink markers. So give that a try. Now that my images are all finished and colored in, I'm going to use the coordinating die to die cut them out. And I'm using my Hero Arts compact cutter. I like having this kind of off on the side that I can bring into the screen for these smaller elements. It's about a 3-inch wide plate, so I did have to trim my cardstock a little bit to fit on those plates. I'm going to move on to my background. So I have a piece of white cardstock here that I added a little bit of repositionable tape behind it to just hold that temporarily in place onto my magnetic work surface. This is Hamemermill cardstock that I trimmed down to 6x6 to fit my stencil. And this is a brand new stencil as well from Pretty Pink Posh. It is the SUNBURST stencil. And I'm going to do 3 different colors. I started by doing the whole stencil with squeezed lemonade. Then I'm going to come in with mustard seed, and each time I start in the middle and work my way out. So with the mustard seed, I only went about halfway out on the rays, and now I'm coming in with wild honey, which is really going to brighten that up in the center. Now here is a really fun thing you can do with the stencil is I'm going to take it, this is a great background, but I want it to be fuller, more full. So I'm just going to turn it once. And what that's going to do is it's going to line up those rays in between the rays that I just did. And then I went back through that entire process with squeezed lemonade, mustard seed, and wild honey distress ink. So now I have this background just filled with these beautiful sun rays. I'm going to add a little bit of interest to this, starting with some white paint that I added some water to, and I'm going to flick that all over the background. And then I took the wild honey distress ink, squished it down on my surface, added a little bit of water, and added flicks of that as well. While that's drying, I'm going to create a frame for my card front. So I have this stitched frame. I believe this is from the birthday cake die, and I die cut that twice from white cardstock. I'm going to layer it together with some double-sided tape. That's just going to help give it some stability. And then after my background is dry, I am taking just a plain rectangle die that I have in my stash. That really helps me center up the middle of that sun ray. So I really wanted to have that centered. The rectangle die helps me with that. I'm holding that in place with my Easy C tape and die cutting that with my Spellbinders Platinum 6. I'm going to bring my frame back in and I'm going to line the back of it with some foam strips and add this to the front of my card panel. I could have turned that into a shaker, but I just really like that frame. Then I can work on building up my basket. So this was an afterthought. This is a basket off of the fruit berries, fruit salad, one of the stamp sets in the new release. I will have it all linked down below in the video description. But I loved this basket and decided I wanted to have all of my watermelons in it. So I just kind of start out figuring out what's going to go in the background, what's going to be more towards the front. And I just kind of go back and forth between liquid glue and thin foam squares. So now I'm just kind of tucking in some of these leaves. I have that big chunk of watermelon in the back. I thought that was a nice bright pink, bright pop of color in the background. And then having some slice in the front of my basket. And this is why I had stamped and colored multiples of the image so I could have a few of the leaves here and there poking out from the basket. One of them is going to be kind of overlaying into the front just to really build up that scene. Now, once I have that all done, I'm going to bring this over to my Misti and I'm just using these as a guide. I have a smaller sentiment I want to stamp at the top. So I placed everything where I wanted it, picked that smaller sentiment up with the door of the Misti, and then just made sure to remove everything before inking up this sentiment with Versafine ink. Now I am going to stamp it twice because I'm being really gentle when I'm stamping it. I don't want to squish or distort those small letters. And then I have the word melon that also has a coordinating die, which I love, and I added that right underneath my stamped sentiment. I'm going to take my basket of watermelons and I added some foam squares just down towards the bottom of the basket. Everything else was so layered up that it actually is pretty flush once just adding those foam squares at the bottom and then adding liquid glue to the top and placing that in the center of my card. And I did make sure to position it so that it's hiding that open white spot that's in the center from the Sunburst. Then I used some of the lime shimmer confetti mix, added those onto my card. I did some white gel pen highlights and then finishing it off with adding sparkle using my unicorn stickles. And I just added that to the watermelon pieces that are in pink. That's going to finish up my fun, cheerful card for you today using the brand new watermelon stamp set and Sunburst Stencil from Pretty Pink Posh. I will have all of those supplies listed down below in the video description and over on my blog as well. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you again real soon.